Yes, it's me.
Hello?
Mais je vois personne, moi.
No, you don't see it. So if for anybody who's ever watching this, if that stays online,
Hello.
here we have Rozenn Guérois. She's going to talk to us about tonal alterations in Cuwabo.
Merci, thank you. Yeah, my talk is in English. I'm sorry, I'm French, but I think for certain terms it's much easier to talk in English. So yeah, I'm going to talk about Cuwabo. Yeah, is it okay for the sound? Yeah. Okay. So first of all, a few words about Cuwabo. It's a Bantu language spoken in central North Mozambique. It has about 1 million speakers, so it's not endangered at all. It's spoken around a city called Kiliman, central North Mozambique. It's classified as P34. I don't know whether it's something you are familiar with. No. It's a classification made by Guérois, but it's not a genetic classification. It's sort of referential classification. But it can still help a bit genetically, but it shouldn't be considered as a genetic classification. Okay, so in this talk, I'm going to show how different syntactic constructions in Cuwabo are associated with a specific tonal alteration, which consists in deleting the first high tone of a word, usually a noun. I will show this to you. And I will try to show how this high tone deletion may be related to the loss of what we call in Bantu, among Bantu scholars, the augment. I will explain to you later what the augment is. So for the plan, I will basically show you how the Cuwabo tonal system works. In the first section, I will then present the link between the tone and the augment. And finally, I will present you the case of tonal variation within noun phrases. The data come from fieldwork which I did during my PhD studies, because I described the Cuwabo language for my PhD. I wrote a grammar of the language. So it's both natural data, but also elicited data. Okay, so first section, basics on the Cuwabo tonal system. So Cuwabo has two tones. It's a binary system between high tone and the absence of tone. So some phonologists would say it's the difference between high and low, but it's very common in Eastern Bantu languages that we just distinguish a high tone and a zero tone. So in this case, only the high tone is indicated by means of an acute accent on top of the segment. And the tone bearing unit, TBU, is the mora in Cuwabo. So in the table 1, I give you all the different tone patterns for nouns. So you see it's quite a number, 16 of them, between 2 moras and 7 moras. On the second column, I give you the underlying tone pattern. And on the third one, I give you the surface tone. And we'll see later why surface tone obviously differ from the underlying one because of some tonal rules which exist in the language, something very common in Bantu. Yeah. So I will explain to you a bit later, but circumstance means falling. Yeah. So it's not as high as the preceding high tone. It's more for phonetic concerns. I will explain to you later. So what is interesting with these different tone pattern is probably the fact that there are 3 different tone patterns for the 3 moras line, which is quite exceptional in the P30 languages. So Cuwabo is P34, but it's surrounded by other P30 languages, including Makua, which is quite well described. And Cuwabo and Makua are considered as sister languages. And Makua consists of many different dialects and varieties. And the fact that there are 3 underlying tone patterns on the second line, the line of the 3 moras, is quite exceptional in P30 languages. And it has only been attested in Shangaji. It's Maud Devos who told me about it. But otherwise, it's not something that we commonly see in the languages of this region. So the tones have a lexical function, as can be expected. So it allows to distinguish the meaning of two segmentally identical words. I give you the examples of mulala and mulala, so basket and traditional toothbrush. Oh, and before that, sorry, I forgot to indicate you at the bottom of table 1, which is something important to tell. Each noun has at least one underlying high tone in Cuwabo. In certain cases, this high tone can be deleted, we'll see that, but underlyingly, there's always a high tone. And when there are two underlying high tones, the second one is lexical, is analyzed as a lexical high tone.
What is the difference?
So an underlying, I call underlying high tone a high tone which is subjected to tone rules in the language. So which can double, which can spread. Because it's an underlying, it can be subjected, it can be tonal rule apply. Yeah. But the lexical is also underlying because it can apply, it can spread, double. But it's different from a grammatical tone, for instance. Okay, because for instance, on certain time categories, the tone pattern differs, and here you make the distinction between lexical and a lexical will differentiate two terms.
So if there is only one, it will be both lexical and
yeah. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yeah. And unless there is a neutralization in certain time categories, we'll see that later. Yeah. If it's a noun, it will. But let's go on. And so it has a lexical function, indeed, but it also has a grammatical function, and tones allow to make the distinction between different tense aspect and mood categories. And I give you the different tone patterns in table 2. So there are 5 of them, 5 tone patterns, different tone patterns to distinguish time categories. And the first 2 make a distinction between verbs which are inherently high and verbs which are inherently toneless. So it means that the preservation, there is a retention of this high tone contrast, this lexical contrast on the different conjugations. So I give you examples in the first 2 lines. So you have the high verbs dambuluela against the low verbs, the inherently low verbs damuroromeliwa. Okay, so if I roll it, if I promise it, here you see the contrast between verbs which are inherently high, and the high tone in this case is on the penultimate mora. Okay, so you have a lexical high tone contrast, but no grammatical high tone on these forms. On the second line, you have also a lexical high contrast, but on top of that, you also have grammatical high tones on the first mora of the stem or macro stem. So in Bantu, the difference between stem and macro stem includes the object markers, the object marker. It's a prefix which comes before the stem. We call it macro stem. So the resulting form is given on the second column, obubuluela, to roll to, for the high verbs, and for the toneless verb, ororomelia. Okay? So here on obubuluela, you have the lexical high tone, which is on the penultimate mora, E, and you have a grammatical high tone, which is normally on bu, on the first mora of the stem, but we'll see later that it appears on the preceding mora, on the O, obubuluela, and then you have a spreading, a plateauing. And on the toneless verbs, you only have the grammatical high tone which manifests on the first mora of the stem, the S1, ororomeliwa. Yeah. So it is manifested on the object below plus object prefix, OPs, object prefix, omuro meliwa. Okay, so here it does not start on the stem, but on the macro stem, which starts with the object prefix mu.
Yeah,
Mu here is the object prefix. Okay. Exactly, because I mean, what I think is I'm not so sure about that, but what Kissebers and I have tried to analyze is that this grammatical high tone is supposed to target the first mora of the stem or the macro stem if there's an object prefix. But because of the presence of the lexical high tone for high verbs, we suppose that we cannot have two underlying high tones on the same stem. And then the grammatical high tone, which originally should have manifested on the stem or macro stem, appears first on the pre-stem mora. So in this case, the O, which is the marker of the infinitive in Bantu, or I mean in Cuwabo, but yeah, class 15 non-class prefix. Okay? And we'll see that if as you can see it's interesting to see on those forms that if there is an object prefix, a different tone rule applies. Okay, so if you compare Obubuluela, here you see a plateauing, right? A plateauing, which means a spreading between two underlying high tones, right? But if you add mu, which is the object prefix, it stops. So this is a consequence of adding object prefix for certain time categories. It stops, it blocks the spreading of a high tone. So it means as a result, we have two different tonal rules, which I am actually now going to talk about. A very first note before I'm entering into the section on tone rules. This retention that I have been developing on just now, this retention of a lexical high tone on verbs is something very specific to Cuwabo, which means that among P30 languages, Cuwabo is the only language which retained this contrast. And this contrast between high verbs and low verbs is something which has been reconstructed to Proto-Bantu. So in this sense, Cuwabo is more conservative than the other languages of the P30 group, which have innovated in different tone patterns, grammatical tone patterns, and with always a neutralization between high and low verbs. Okay, fine. So tone rules. So underlying high tones are distinguished from high tones which surface as the result of phonological rules linked with high tone spreadings. Okay, so I think the distinction between underlying high tones and high tones which are the result of spreading of tonal processes. So the underlying high tones are systematically underlined in the remaining of this paper, so that it helps you to see what is an underlying high tone or not, and to see how they behave. And Cuwabo has two tone spreading rules. The first is called high tone doubling, and the second is plateauing or long distance spreading. So let's go to the first one, high tone doubling. So this process consists in spreading a primary or underlying, I should have said underlying here, but anyway, high tone minimally, which means only on one mora, on the next right word mora. This process applies both word internally and between words. This is shown in 1A and 1B. So in 1A, you have the process within the same word, osukumia. Okay, so su here as an underlying high, and it spreads on the next mora, suku. Okay, osukumia. And in 1B, you have the same process which applies between two words. So you have omsasanile. Here, le is an underlying high tone, which spreads on V of viola on the preceding word. So it works both word internally and between words. But it suffers a few restrictions when applied at the right boundary of a prosodic unit. And here I'm referring to Cheng and Kisber's constraints. Both the authors examine three common types of restrictions on this process of high tone doubling in phrase final position. So you have these three constraints. Page 3, non-finality constraint, which says that underlying high tone does not double onto a phrase final vowel. Okay. So this, if you look at table 3, this constraint applies in Cuwabo. So we have the example in table 3, olima, which is to cultivate. Here you have an underlying high tone on li. It does not spread, it does not double on ma because it's at the end of a phonological phrase. You have two other constraints, the long fall constraint and the phrase penult constraint. So in each of them, the underlying high does not double onto the second mora of a bimoraic phrase penult syllable for the long fall constraint, and it does not double onto a monomoraic syllable in phrase penult position. So I gave you between parentheses the syllabic structure so that it's easier to grasp and to see. So here on the long fall constraint, the underlying on the long vowel cannot double on the second vowel of the long vowel. That's this constraint. It's the long fall constraint. On the phrase penult constraint, the underlying on the pre-penult position does not double on the penultimate mora. But this does not apply in Cuwabo. In both these contexts, the syllabic context, doubling does occur. And I give you the examples of ojeda, wait, and here the underlying high tone on the first vowel of the long vowel does double on the next one. And because the next one is on the penultimate position of a phonological phrase, it has a sort of falling pitch. It's not as high as the first high tone. So it's not ojeda, it's ojeda. Okay, I don't know whether I pronounce it correctly. You can hear this falling pitch, but yeah, it's quite neat. And the same with the third one, ofugula. Here, ofu, fu does double on gu on the penultimate mora, but again with a falling pitch.
So, can we say that the long vowels and the first penult are the same? Is the third more, the third to last one?
Yes, yeah, no, exactly. It's just that the surface syllabic structure is different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So you could not have what we formulated saying that it just doesn't spread onto the
penultimate mora. Yeah.
It can appear there lexically. Yeah. It's as if, yeah, it's as if. I mean, if it's lexical, you can delete it. Right? Yeah. As if there's like a further the last two more. Yeah. The last two more will not be classified phonologically.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it would work. Yeah. It would work.
Except not in this one.
Yeah. If it's at the end of a phrase, a phonological phrase, yeah. So here I indicate this falling character with the circumflex accent for a phonetic concern. So the falling property of the doubled tone is more precise. And in fact, it's interesting if you compare with other dialects of P30 languages, of other Makua dialects, which also have this doubling rule, but without this falling pitch. So if you compare Cuwabo, Koti, and Lai, it's quite clear. So in Cuwabo, you have this falling pitch, ojeda. In Koti as well, omala, but not in Lai, oheta, ta. So it's more precise in a phonetic perspective. Yeah, but I'm not a speaker, so okay. But yeah. Oheta, omala. Okay, so now what's the interaction between high tone doubling and word-to-word interaction? So we see that this high tone doubling, this first tonal rule in Cuwabo, may be blocked on the phrasal level. And here we have a principle which is called obligatory contour principle effect, which sometimes applies, as we're going to see. And so this effect blocks the doubling, and It's considered as a family of constraints. This obligatory control principle, you probably know about it, right? Yeah. Okay, you know even better than me. So, and more specifically, in the case of Bantu languages, there is this Meussen's rule, which disallows two adjacent heights. So this doubling restriction is linked, as we're going to see, with the tone patterns of the elements combined. So for this, I checked the tonal behavior of different sequences. The first is a verb plus an object, a noun object, and then noun subject plus verb. And I try to see how tones behave. Are there restrictions on high tone doubling, depending on the tonal patterns of the nouns? So I compared in three a verb with a penult primary high tone, whereas in four, I used the verb with a final primary high tone. Then let's go back to three. So we have a verb with a penult primary high tone, and I compare sequences with a noun with an initial high tone in A, in B, a noun with an initial zero high sequence, and in C, a noun with an initial 0-0 sequence, just to see how high tone doubling operates in those contexts. And in 3A, we see that there is no high tone doubling, which is made possible because of an OCP effect. So oja mulima, okay? It's not very strict, but if I ask the speaker to say this calmly in a I won't hear doubling on ja. So oja mulima, ompa mutu, ogulia wutu. Okay. Now, if the speaker speaks very, very fast in a story, it can happen. So it's not a very strict rule, a very, very strict OCP effect, but it still applies. In 3B, there is no OCP effect, and high tone doubling does occur because it's made possible, right? No, there is no OCP effect, indeed, because the following word does not start with a high tone, so there is no OCP effect, and you can have doubling. Yeah. Alone, it's opa, but if it is followed by a word which does not start with a high tone, then high tone doubling operates on o, opa, lowe.
The noun is the first and the second. So all verbs have a primary. The first word is
exactly.
Oh
yeah, indeed, yeah. And so the same, so it's a sequence of verb plus noun. Huh? Yeah. So the first word is always the verb here. And in C as well, and even more, I would say, because the noun is toneless. In this specific context, the noun gets toneless. So obviously, in this case, high tone doubling does occur on the verb. Now, if we compare with 4, when the verb finishes with an underlying high tone, right? So here in 4A, when the following noun has an initial high tone, there is no high tone doubling which is made possible because there is no mora available for high tone doubling. So in this case, you have 2 adjacent underlying high tone. It does not imply any deleting of them, but it obviously cannot, high tone doubling cannot occur because there is no available mora to host the doubled high.
Here there is
violation, indeed. Yeah, you have 2 underlying high tone which follow each other, and none is deleted. Yeah. True. Yeah. So OCP effect works in Cuwabo, but not when there are 2 underlying high tone which follow each other.
high tone.
So, say again?
It only, so the OCP constraint only applies when the clash is derived by the word.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yes.
not if it's underlined,
Yeah.
you don't need them.
Yeah. It just remains. Yeah.
And then the tones that preceding the final syllable in those verbs, we ignore them from now. So ovula, so that's O high. Is that underlying or is it because of the second rule you will be talking about?
Which one is underlying?
So
Yeah.
So
It's the lexical high tone.
And
yes.
the others are underlying.
They are all underlined. So the underlined segments represent, remember, underlying high tones, which means that which can be subjected to tonal rules. In the verb like ogula, la is the high tone. It's the lexical high tone. Or yeah, here it gets doubled because it can.
Yeah. So how is it?
Because it's but yeah, that's it. It gets double because it is followed by a noun. In isolation, you would have ogula. You hear? Ogula. Gu is lower. Gu is low. But if it's followed by a noun, by anything, then it occurs. So maybe in this case, the OCP does not. It's tricky, and I'm not an expert, but it probably does not operate within the same word. But if the word is followed, you have a longer, what I call phonological phrase. I'm not even sure I should call this way. You'll tell me. Yeah, prosodic unit, or I'm not sure. Then it operates. High tone doubling operates. And then the high tone on the O, remember, is should have occurred on the stem, but retracted to the pre-stem mora. So it's a grammatical tone. But yeah. Okay, so that was for the sequence verb plus noun. Now the sequence noun subject plus verb. So it's more or less the same kind of rules which apply. So in 5, you have noun subject with a penult primary high tone like mutu, okay, followed in A by an initial high tone verb. So mutu onoja, someone is eating. Here you don't have high tone doubling, probably because of an OCP effect again. In B, you have high tone doubling because the verb which follows does not start with a high tone. So it's the same logic. Okay, there is a possibility here to double mutu oja. In 6, you have nouns with a final primary high tone like moana, and when it's followed by an initial high tone, again, no high tone doubling is available because there is no available mora. So it's just exactly like we saw earlier in 4A, exactly the same thing, same context. And then in 6B, you have a verb with an initial tone note, zero tone and high tone sequence, and then high tone doubling is not possible. Mwana oja, kunguni kivavile. So here it's also strange. You would expect the first high tone, underlying high tone, to double, and I think it's possible. I think if the speaker speaks fast, it could be possible to say mwana oja. I'm pretty sure. I'm confident enough with the language to. So here I think it's probably because it was elicitation, and he spoke in a clear and slow way, and then he sort of said mwana oja. Okay, but if it was in a quick in the middle of a sentence in natural speech, it could very well say mwana oja. Okay, it's so you see how the high tone doubling, the OCP effect is not very, very, very strict. It's been hard in the end to really account for it because it's not always you always find exceptions depending on the rate on the speech rate. Sorry. So, but yeah, there are tendencies. Yeah, Noam.
So we did see above in 4A,
Yeah.
we saw that the first lexicon title spread to the second, right? From the O to the U, even though
on the verb, ogula.
on,
Yeah.
on the verb,
Yeah.
but not on the noun in 6A.
Yeah.
In the moana,
Which
on
is
the noun moana, it doesn't trickle on the noun.
Yeah. But it could, huh? It really could. I'm even
like
surprised that
in
it. Kunguni kivavile. Yeah, it could. I'm 100% sure it could. Yeah. Moana oja. I have many examples in my narratives that. Yeah, but even kunguni kivavile. Kunguni kivavile. Yeah. But why not?
It is not long.
What's that? That terrible thing you don't want to have.
Yes, yeah.
But they do fly.
Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I induced him to use this verb, this noun with this verb. I don't know.
Okay.
So maybe it's my fault. I don't remember now. It's true. It's true. Okay, let's go to the second tone rule, which is plateauing. So, I mean, plateauing, it's, I don't know whether you heard about this term before, but it's quite transparent. So plateauing implies that at least two toneless moras become high between two underlying high tones. So it's like a spreading, spreading of a high tone between two underlying high tones, right? Unlike high tone doubling, plateauing only occurs word internally. And you have different, I mean, if you go back, for instance, on table 1, you have 3 noun tone patterns for which have this plateauing tone rule. So it's if you go back, well, you can go back to the table 1. So you have the HHHL. Yeah, but that would be you have to look on the third column, surface tones. You have it on the English word shell, niguruguru. You have it for the verb herb. Yeah, in 5, and then in 6 moras, you have it on the second word manye yaruge, and then on neighbor, the very last word. So you have 2 underlying high tones, as you can see on the second column, which are linked, which are tonally linked. So you have a spreading of the first underlying high till the second underlying high. The second is lexical, and the first, we don't know exactly yet. I am assuming here in this talk, but I'm pretty sure it's the case, that it is the augment. And I'm going to talk about that later.
This is a sort of an anti-OCP effect, right? Plateauing, because OCP doesn't want 2 highs to be next to each other.
Yeah.
And this one takes 2 highs and makes them 1. Yeah. It's OCP also. Yeah. But it doesn't happen when there's only 1 between. Right?
But they couldn't be 1 in between them.
That happens in 3 in the word nikara. Okay? So
yeah.
So nikara.
This. Yeah. Here there is no doubling. But here you wouldn't even call about plateauing, because plateauing involves at least 2. But doubling, you could have, but there would be doubling if nikara was followed by another word, like the examples we saw in 4, ogula nyumba, or wiwa murubu. You see, feel the intestine in 4b.
Yeah.
The first underlying high of e on I Guérois, it doubles here.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, there's doubling. Oh,
There is doubling, yeah, because there is only one mora, so you would say high tone doubling, right? But of course, I mean, in this three moraic words, you could say, oh, is it doubling or is it plateauing?
yeah. Well, that's the thing. What's the difference?
But that's why I define plateauing as at least two high tones.
In both cases, it could be splitting. So in both cases,
But-
the result is just one high tone.
Yes, indeed, yeah. But plateauing is more a long range spreading, long distance spreading. Yes, yeah.
But there are cases in phonology where there is a constraint called no lapse, right? I don't know if that is active manually, but you don't want. But I don't know if it will work. Yeah. Or you don't want too long a stretch with nothing, with no tone.
But here in this language, you have verb tone patterns where a very long verb is completely low.
Mhm.
So Cuwabo is true. Normally, Cuwabo does not like toneless words, and as I told you, there is no every noun, every word has at least an underlying high, but except it's true in certain verb patterns which are completely toneless. There are only a few of them, but in this case, the contrast between the historical contrast between high verbs and low verbs, high tone verbs and toneless verbs, is neutralized, is deleted and neutralized. So you have certain time categories which neutralize the distinction between high verbs and toneless verbs. And these are illustrated on table 2 on the 4 last tone patterns. Yeah, so page 2. So here on this table, you have a distinction between those verbs, and I put them in highlighted, in bold, right? Which still which retain the distinction between, there's a distinction between the verbs which retained lexical high tone, which is indicated in bold, and those which do not, because historically they don't have a lexical high tone. But then if you look at the 4 last line, you don't have any more distinction between high verbs and toneless verbs because it has been neutralized. So we call it in Bantu, we call it melodic pattern. So for certain time categories, it's the same pattern for absolutely all verbs. And the historical distinction between those which are inherently high and those which are not is lost. Okay? So it's neutralization. Yeah.
So we have 4 more forms like Guérois, along the third line in table 1. So there we see tone doubling but not plateauing. Is that because the last high tone is final in the word? Like we have H, 0, 0, so high, 0, 0, high.
Yeah. For
So
navel, yeah.
there we don't have plateauing. But I see that the lexical tone is final and they are not final shell or verb. So maybe that's because
this one is tricky. Yeah, this pattern, I have very few words belonging to this pattern.
Right.
And it's true. I can generalize on most of them, but this one, muteku, I have no clear idea how to account for this. So you have high tone doubling, but it's true, you don't have plateauing. Maybe it's because the lexical high tone is on the final mora. I don't know. I don't have enough words, but it still exists. I must have, I don't know, a handful of words. But yeah, it's not a common tone pattern. Okay, good. So we were on plateauing. Yes. Okay. So yeah. So you have this plateauing tone rule, which applies on 3 different nominal tone patterns, and it also applies in certain verb forms with certain time categories. And I give you an example in 7. So here you have infinitive verb forms. On the left column, you have high tone verbs. So verbs which are historically high, which means which have historically a lexical high tone on the stem. On the right column, you have on the opposite verbs which are historically with no tones. Okay, so I mentioned this distinction several times already. So on the left column, you have, let's go to the verb, the last one to roll to, because it's the longest one, so it's the most obvious one. You have the lexical high on the penult, A, and then you have the first underlying O, and then you have a clear plateauing between the two underlying tones. If you go to the opposite side, the toneless verbs, to promise, here you have an underlying on ro, which only doubles on the next one. Because in those toneless verbs, you don't have lexical high tones, so plateauing cannot occur, right? Because you don't have two underlying high tones on those verb forms. So in this case, so on the high tone verbs, the second underlying high tone is considered as the lexical high tone. And the first one, as I briefly mentioned already, but now I'm repeating it, Kieseberth and I, in a 2014 paper, we assume that this first grammatical high tone, because it's linked with the tam category of those verbs, the infinitive verb form in this case, was originally assigned to the first stem, the first mora of the stem. Okay, so in this case, on bou. But it retracted to o, to the pre-stem mora, because the stem already has an underlying high tone, the lexical high tone.
That's because you say because.
But because if you compare with the toneless verbs, why is there a high tone?
No, I agree. So the high tone and the zero tone verb have the same origin.
Yeah, yeah. It's just that
doesn't retract in the
no, because
no need to retract.
no need to retract, because it goes to the place where it should belong to. Now, don't ask me why it should emerge or anchor to ro and not o. This I don't know. I have no clear idea why this grammatical underlying should appear on the first mora of the stem. This I'm not sure. But what I am sort of sure of is that on the high tone verbs, it probably originally emerges on the first mora of the stem, but retracts because the stem already has an underlying high tone. So there would be a constraint avoiding two underlying high tones in the same stem. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And the same thing applies on nouns. If we go back to, well, we're not going back to table 1, but it's the same thing on high nouns.
Well, probably you said this before, but it seems there is something that is regular. If you look back to table 1, so if you have no tone on the prefix, is it a kind of prefix or what's the other?
It's a prefix, yeah, it's a prefix, yeah.
So if you have no tone on the prefix, then you need to have a high tone on the first.
Indeed, yes.
More so that's really, and then if you have a high tone, you for sure you cannot have an adjacent high tone on the stem. So there's some kind of regular interaction between the augment and the stem.
Here it's
so this probably explains the what you said before. There is kind of retraction of the high tone, because exactly what we expect is that if you have a stem preceded by a prefix that has no tone, then you need a high tone first mora, right?
But I think
originally, what I'm
the
saying is probably if you do some kind of derivation in assigning these forms, and then you start assigning, you start lexical or not. So that's a point of view. So you assign a high term there.
Yeah.
And then you do your derivation
Yeah.
later, depending on what you have on the other text, right? So you have not have a term, then you keep your high term in the first floor. If you have a term, then you rearrange the pattern, and then you assign a high term to the next mora, not the first one, you understand, but the next one, right? No.
I was kind of lost.
So I mean, is if you assume kind of derivation, first lexical.
Yeah, I think the first thing which matters is there a lexical high tone or not?
Where you assume there
On the
is
penultimate.
or then you need your prefix not to have.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It retracts then.
Oh.
The high tone retracts to the preceding, the pre-stem mora. Yeah.
If you have no stem,
Yeah.
then you augment surfaces.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. On the first mora of the stem. Yeah.
Then whether you have you call doubling or flattering is kind of consequence of this first arrangement.
Yeah. I
correlates
think
with
so.
it.
Yeah, it correlates.
It can be not a consequence because the reason, right? Correlates.
Yeah, it correlates. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, and then what is interesting, as I briefly mentioned it before, if in addition there is an object prefix on those verb forms, the presence of the object blocks, as I told you before, the spreading of the first underlying high tone. And here I give you an example in 8, where you have the same verb to roll, to eat, with the mu. Mu is the beginning of the macro stem. Omu bubuluela. Mu is the class 1 object marker here. And then, so the first underlying high on O will just double. We won't spread till the penultimate lexical high tone. Right, so no spreading, only doubling, because of the presence of the prefix, the object prefix. I am not sure exactly why it is like that, why you don't have plateauing here, but in any case, it's because, I mean, the fact is that when the object prefix is present, no plateauing occurs. So it blocks the spreading of the first underlying high. Okay, now so yeah, I sort of told it already, but let's go into more details. That this first high tone, which you've seen on those nouns which have 2 underlying high tones, I would like to show that it can be linked with the augment, what we call in Bantu the augment. And I'm actually surprised you mentioned the augment. You know about the augment then?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay. So what is the Bantu augment? So first of all, it has been reconstructed, Proto-Bantu by Meosen, and I mean, with the shape of a vocalic shape, a vowel shape, or CV shape, but with a high tone, which is important. The historical evolution of the the Bantu augment is not so clear. But synchronically, in the languages which have been described recently, there are different stages which are attested. Certain present-day Bantu languages have a productive and functional use of the augment, whereas others lost it. So the augment is a sort of pre-prefix. So you probably know that Bantu languages have a very rich system of agreement and prefixation. And the augment is a sort of pre-prefix, which has a sort of a determiner function, as I told you, as I mentioned a bit later. So first of all, formally, morphologically, it is normally segmental. So you have a V shape. Normally, it has the shape of an onsetless vowel, which precedes the noun class prefix. You have examples in 9 and 10. In Zulu and Luganda, and as you can see in those languages, every noun class uses an overt augment. So in Zulu, you have the shape U, I, A, and you see that it really depends, the shape depends on the vowel of the noun class prefix, okay? The same in Luganda, it's O, E, A, exactly the same. So O will go with the back vowels, and the A with the front vowels, and A with the A vowels. No, interestingly, some languages have just lost they still have the segmental augment, but they lost the high tone associated with it. Okay. And then, yeah, I give you a few examples in context in 11, but we can skip this. And then in other Bantu languages, the augment is used only with some classes, but not others. So you have an examples in 12 with Swati, where only classes 1, 3, 4, 9, 6, and 2 have an augment. But the other ones, the other classes are augmentless. Okay, so that was for the segmental augments. Many languages still have an augment nowadays, but not all. A certain number also lost this augment segmentally. Now, what about the tonal augment? So in Guni, there is a tonal distinction which is best analyzed as an underlying high tone on the augment. So it means that in Guni, you have a segmental augment which also has the high tone on it. So the augment is also associated with a high tone in Guni. So you have it in 13A and B. A, the augmented form Abantu, comes with the high tone, which is associated with the A, the segmental A, which is the augment. Also in grassfield Bantu languages, so here you see in Guni you have a tonal augment, but which is associated with a segmental augment. So you don't have only a tonal augment. But in grassfield Bantu languages, so languages which are Bantu languages which are spoken in Cameroon, which are very different from the rest of the Bantu languages which spread afterwards. You have certain tonal alternations or noun prefixes constituted evidence for an earlier high tone augment. So it's mostly because of those languages that we know that Proto-Bantu augment should be considered with a high tone. And then you have different but comparable phenomena which are found in Northwest Bantu. So anyway, historically, it seems that the Proto-Bantu augment should bear a tonal, a high tone. Very briefly, what is the function of the augment? The augment is often considered as a determiner, a default marker for reference. So nouns with an augment assert the existence of the reference. So it refers to a particular entity, an individual entity, a specific entity. On the contrary, nouns without the augment do not assert such existence. Doesn't mean that they deny it, but they do not assert it with strength. So it could be considered as interpreted as anything like or anything that can be classified as, but it's not as referential as augmented forms. So we see that in Cuwabo you have different syntactic environments where this first underlying high tone, which we have seen very often so far, disappears. Okay. And this makes me wonder about the link between this first underlying high tone and an augment. So let's try to dig into that. So is there an augment in Cuwabo? First of all, if we look at the noun classes on table 4, we see that there is no segmental realization of an augment. So if there's an augment in Cuwabo, it is certainly not segmental. You have several noun classes, but it's just noun classes. It's not pre-prefix, it's not augment. Now, page 7. So if the augment in Cuwabo is not segmental, could it be tonal? Is there a tonal manifestation of the augment? So here I'm going to talk about an interesting phenomena in Cuwabo, which is also attested in Makua, which is a sister language of Cuwabo, which I call first high tone deletion. Some other scholars called it predicative lowering, but I think it's misleading because it's not lowering, it's deletion. And predicative is only one context in which this tonal process occurs. So predicative lowering, I ban it. So I call it first high tone deletion. You will understand why. So first high tone deletion is a tone process which consists in deleting the first underlying high of a word, usually a noun. And this is restricted to Cuwabo and Makua, as I told, which are genetically related. So in Cuwabo, it means that when a word undergoes first high tone doubling, its first high tone gets deleted along with the doubled high tone, of course. And if the underlying high tone gets deleted, the second one, the doubled high tone gets deleted as a result. But importantly, first high tone deletion only targets the first high tone and leaves any other high tone unaffected. So if the word has a lexical high, the lexical high remains. And I give you examples here. So in 14a, you have only one primary underlying high tone. Let's go to underlying. Should have changed that, sorry. Musano, a queen. If you want to say it is a queen, so non-verbal predication, you have a deletion of the high tone. Musano, it is a queen. But if the citation word, the word in its citation form has two underlying high tone, the second of which is lexical, if you want to make it a non-verbal predication, the lexical one remains. Only the first underlying high gets deleted. So you have Muyana, woman, Muyana, it is a woman. Okay? Yes, yeah. No, it's just a word in its citation form. Odu Muyana. This Muyana is a woman. Yeah. Odu Muyana. Yeah. Muyana. Yeah. Yeah, they could. So this first high tone deletion occurs in several different environments in Cuwabo. So first of all, non-verbal predication, as I showed you in 14, but I give you other examples in 15, 16, and 17. In A, I always give you the citation form. So the word as it is pronounced in isolation, with the tone pattern in isolation. And in B, I give you the form, the word, the noun. Oh no, it's not always a noun. Sometimes it's an infinitival verb and an adjective in 17. But in non-verbal predication, so in 15a, you have namapuja, a joker. The hair is a joker. Namarogolo, namapuja. Okay, so here high tone deletion, first high tone deletion. The same in 16. Omulaga mwana omvada is beating away to educate a child. You know, so literally it means it is to educate a child. Is it beating him? First high tone deletion. Then 17, the doors of these houses are small. Misuo dhanyumbesi vindimua. Whereas in isolation, it would be vindimua. Okay, so first high tone deletions also occurs after conjoint verb forms. Have you heard about the conjoint disjoint alternation? No, of course not. So it's a very Bantuist thing. Yeah. Of course, yes, as well. Yeah. But in any case, omvada, there is a lexical high tone on the last one. But even if it was toneless verbs, you could very, very easily have a high tone, intonational high. True, yeah. But in any case, but what is important here is that the O is deleted, and this is just very relevant. It's enough, you know. Okay, so the conjoint disjoint alternation applies in a number of Eastern Bantu languages, and basically, how to explain this? it relates to some tam categories which are subdivided into a pair of complementary conjugations. So it means that for the same tam, you have two different conjugations. The meaning is the same, but what differs is their relationship with what comes afterwards. So what a conjunct form comes with something which follows, and this following element is in a focus position. So conjoint verbs are always followed by a focus. Whereas disjoint verbs may be followed by an object, let's say, but this object won't be in a focus position. Okay? So this is the conjoint disjoint alternation in certain Bantu languages is a strategy to express focalization. Okay? So I give you examples in table 5, which is very representative of this alternation. You have 7 verb forms, 7 tam categories, tense aspect mood categories in Cuwabo, which for which this alternation between conjoint and disjoint applies. So it's not for all tams, it's only for some of them. They are all listed in table 5 in Cuwabo. On the first column, you have the conjoint, and then the right column, you have the disjoint forms. And if you look at the following object, which is dress, the conjoint noun, the object for the conjoint verbs appears toneless. Okay, whereas in disjoint, it appears with its underlying high tone. So if you go to the present imperfective, omfula mutede, he's washing a dress. Here, mutede has a focus position. Okay, he's washing what? A dress. So to express focus in Cuwabo, not only you will use a conjoint verb form, but you will also delete the first high tone on the noun.
If you don't have any high tone, then there's no way.
But as I told you, there is always a high tone on a noun. A noun never comes without a high tone. And it's precisely what I think that this high tone is linked with the augment.
Okay.
Yeah. So in disjoint verb forms, the object just appears as it should, tonally speaking, right? It's just the same as in citation form, the same. And the verb form is also different. It has different morphology, the disjoint morphology. So it's interesting because in Cuwabo you have several factors which come together to express focalization. So you use a specific verb form, the conjoint verb form, and you change the tone pattern on the following noun, which is focused. And also another thing is the position of this object, of this focused object, which is immediately after the verb. So any element which comes after a conjoint verb form is a focus. So here it's a noun, but it could be an adverb, it could even an adverb, which would be a focus in this position. Okay. So I added a note because in this focalization context, the deletion of the first high tone is cross-linguistically rather unexpected because focus context more usually correlates with tone rising or high tone. Yeah. So here it's a bit unexpected indeed. Okay, a third environment in which first high tone doubling occurs. I still have 15 minutes. Yeah. Okay, good. Good.
Well,
good. And because you were asking questions at the same time, so good. So a third environment is the vocative. So the vocative when you call someone. And again, same principle. In A, I give you the citation form of the words, and in B, the contextualized with the vocative in this case. So if we look at 18, supeo, which means mirror, and here I suppose you will see the Portuguese influence. It comes from espelho. And in B, you have the sentence, supeo, mio dimfuna mulubwana. Mirror, mirror, I want a man. This comes from a narrative, a story. And here, very clearly, you see that the supeo, which is in a vocative position, has its tone pattern altered. The first high tone gets deleted. And it's beautiful because it's repeated twice, so it's very neat. And here again, if you pay attention, you will see that mulobwana is in a focused position. It follows a conjoint verb form, and it is also subjected to first high tone deletion. So in this sentence, you have two cases of first high tone deletion, vocative and following a conjoint verb. So it's a beautiful sentence to illustrate this first high tone doubling. Okay, let's go now to the negation. So after negative verb forms, it's very common that the element which follows negation, a negative verb, gets subjected to first high tone deletions. So I give you examples in 2021, 22, 23, 24, with a noun, a demonstrative, an adjective, an infinitive, and a locative noun, respectively. I'm not going into detail for all of them unless you want me to, but again, the principle is the same. In A, you have the citation form with all the tone pattern underlyingly, and then in B, the contextualized examples following the negation. And in all these examples, you see that the first high tone of each of the items, the items following the verbs, is deleted. All of them. Okay, in 25 and 26, but I'm not going, I don't need to show you that. I just give you an example of the subjunctive, which there are two subjunctives in Cuwabo, a dependent one and independent one. And in one of them, first high tone doubling occurs, but not in the independent one. But we can skip that. It's not very important. So I showed you these four different syntactic environments in which first high tone doubling occurs in Cuwabo. Now, the question is, where does this deleted high come from? Okay. And here are some elements of answer. So first of all, the distribution of this initial high is consistent and systematic. No toneless noun is attested in Cuwabo, not even the cognates of historically low tone nouns. Okay. Second thing is that the deletion of this initial high appears in very specific and determined syntactic environments, as I showed you. So this means that the presence versus the absence of this tone is semantically driven. Okay, it has a meaning. It has a function, a grammatical or semantic function. And third, I give you I quote a sentence from Hyman, who says that the narrow Bantu augment was clearly a determiner. Its earlier uses seem to have had to do with marking referentiality or definiteness. As such, we clearly expect it to occur in subject position. And here in 27, I give you an example of, which language is it? In Zulu, yeah. And where the noun ufudu, tortoise, appears in a subject position, and in this position as a subject, where it is very referential, it cannot come without the augment. And in Cuwabo, if you think about Cuwabo nouns which behave as subjects, you can never have first high tone deletion. So nouns in Cuwabo which function as subject always have this first high tone, always. So if we consider that this first high tone in Cuwabo is the augment, then it's very normal that when they function as subject, this first high appears, because they're in a referential position as subjects. Okay, so it goes together with what we know. So, and that's the point of the next subsection. I'm going to try to establish the link between first high tone deletion and the augment. So I here assume, but I will try to argue in favor of this assumption, that the first underlying high tone of a noun in Cuwabo in its citation form is attributed to the augment. And then first high tone doubling would correspond to the absence of the augment. Okay, so in the four environments which I've shown you, remember after conjoint, vocative, after negative, and in nonverbal predication, in all those cases where first high tone deletion occurs, it would mean that the forms come without the augment. So Let's go back to each of those environments and see what happens in other Bantu languages, those languages which still have a segmental augment, to compare and see, okay, can it be the case that this first high tone doubling is in fact correlated with the augment? So in 28, I give you an example of Cuwabo and Makua. Remember, Cuwabo and Makua are sister languages, and they function in the same way in terms of first high tone deletion. So nigagada cassava, nigagada, it is cassava. Okay, Makua the same. Namarokolo, a hair, namarokolo, it is the hair. In Lusoga, which is very far away, it is spoken in Uganda. You have omugeni. So mu is the noun class prefix and o is the augment. And then if you want to make it a non-verbal predication, you delete the augment. Okay? In Zulu, you can also have non-verbal predication by omitting the augment. It is shown in 29. It's optional though, but it still happens. It's still the case that if you delete the augment, you can have the interpretation, it is ghosts that are seen. Okay, shall I go to? Well, I think it's enough. I think we can skip 30 and 31. Yeah, because we're a bit out of time. But in any case, I hope that with at least with the Lusoga example, I showed you that the absence of the augment in certain Bantu languages allows to express nonverbal predication. Okay, so this would be the case with Cuwabo and Makua by means of first high tone deletions, right? I should have a look at more Bantu languages, but at least the fact that it exists in some of them is a good sign. Let's go to the second environment. The one which deals about focalization after conjoint verb forms. So I repeat examples in Cuwabo. I cultivate maize, where Nambede, the first high tone deletion operates. So here in Nambede, the first high tone is the doubled in 32 in the Cuwabo example. And in Makua, also you can compare Nakuo, which is maize in citation form, and after a conjoint form, Kintita, Nakuo gets, the first high tone of Nakuo gets deleted. Okay, so fine, we know that already. What about Luganda? Luganda, which is also spoken in Uganda, which is the main language of Uganda. So if you compare example 33A and 33B, you see that the augmented nouns in 33A, and I put the augment in bold in the three examples. So the augmented nouns are linked with the even focus. So here the verb plus the complement fall within the scope of focus. Now in 33B, you have non-augmented form, augmentless forms, and you have post-verbal focus in this case. So it's a bit different, but you see that in any case, the presence or the absence of the augment is linked with focalization. So it would be another argument to try and see, but it's the other way around actually here. So it means here in 33B, you don't have the augment, but no, it's exactly the same. You have no augment, and the focus is on the post-verbal element, right? So if you delete the which is also, you have no augment, so the element which has no augment is focused, exactly like in Cuwabo. You could reformulate this way. Who did they see? They saw a doctor. Or it is a doctor that you could express this way as well, with a cleft construction, but you don't have to. With an augmentless form, it works.
As an answer, who did they see? Answer would be doctor. So as an answer, you would use
you would use 33B. And the question to 33A I suppose could be. And what else did they do?
Yeah.
Wow, they even saw a doctor. Yeah, you could have that. I suppose it could be an answer to that question. Okay, now third environment, vocative expressions. So remember the Supeyo example, the mirror example in Cuwabo, but I give you an example in 34. Mwadaga, which is my wife, but if you say Mwadaga, wife of mine, you call her. And in Makua, the same, my husband, husband of mine. In the second, it's a vocative and then a change of tones, right? In Zulu as well, it's very clear in 1835, nouns used vocatively always lack the augment. And this is illustrated in 35. Kosi, Jojo, everything is low, and no augment, no segmental augment for these two forms. Maybe it is due by the fact, no, but king is it's a common noun. So George is a proper name, but king is a common noun. So common name. Okay, so it is quite illustrative in this aspect as well. Now let's go to the fourth environment, the complements of negative verb forms, where first high tone deletion occurs in Cuwabo, but not in Makua. So this is a difference between Cuwabo and Makua. They behave the same for the first three environments, but not for the negation environment. Only Cuwabo have first high tone deletion in this context. And if you compare again Luganda, we see the same. You have a negative verb form. They didn't see tebalaba, and then no augment on the noun. And if you decide to add the augment after the negation, it's agrammatical. So exactly the same thing as Cuwabo. And here I give you an example with they didn't, but I think it applies with more negative verb forms. Okay, let's skip the rest because it's just a sort of repetition with other examples. So conclusions. It really seems that the augment in Cuwabo can be linked with the tone. So you would have in Cuwabo just a tonal manifestation of the augment. No segmental manifestation, but only tonal, suprasegmental manifestation of the augment, which is realized on the prefix or on the first mora of the stem. Normally the first mora of the stem in case the noun is lexically toneless, but with a retraction on the pre-stem mora, on the pre-stem mora in case the noun has a lexical high, right?
So this is for now.
Yeah. Yeah, this is for nouns, but for infinitive verbs, it could be considered as nouns. Because
then we do have an augment of real segmental also associated. So that attract that.
With infinitives, yeah, but with other time categories, it's grammatical high tone. It's not linked with the augment, but it seems that
because what you're proposing here is that what is realized in the absence of high tone.
No, so the augment would be the high tone. Yeah. Yes. Not in verbs. You wouldn't call that an augment. No. In verbs, it's a grammatical high, which appears sometimes. It appears on very specific. It's
but I mean,
it's infinitive. Infinitive, it's nouns. You can consider it as a noun because it's class 15. So it's among the paradigms of the different noun classes.
Right.
Yeah. The O is the marker of the infinitive. Yes. Yeah. And it has an augment, this high tone when there is a lexical high on the stem. Good. Are you still okay? I still have a section, but it's a short one, huh? But you're fine, you're not too tired? Okay. This last one, I have no clear solutions yet. It's a bit messy, but still interesting. So here I give you two examples of tonal variation in two different noun phrases. The first one is possessive phrases, so combining a noun plus a possessive. And the second one is demonstrative phrases, combining a noun plus a demonstrative. So let's go to the first one. You have two, the possessive phrases can surface in two different ways in Cuwabo. You have what I call a full form and a contracted form. So in the full form, I consider that overall you have two prosodic units. Don't ask me for a definition. I'm not sure about the terms I should use, so maybe you can help me. Where each constituent appears or seems to appear separately, preserving the tone pattern of their citation form. But with a specific, with low, high, low noun patterns, no blocking, looks like one prosodic unit. Okay, we'll come back to that later. You have, in addition to the full form, you also have a contracted form, which can be considered as one prosodic unit with a specific tone pattern involving systematic shortening effects. So one mora gets lost systematically. You have one moraic loss. And this contracted form obviously is more common in spontaneous speech, in natural speech. So I invite you to look at table 6. You can open like that. So you keep an eye on page 12 and look at the same time the table 6 on page 13. So I indicate here all the different tone patterns attested in Cuwabo for nouns, and followed by a possessive modifier. So the tone, first column is the tone, the syllabic structure, then the full form. So the full form with two different prosodic units, and then a contracted form. So in the contracted form, that's what is of interest for us now. In any case, in all the cases, you have the loss of a mora. And more specifically, it's the mora which is the vowel of the prefix of the demonstrative, of the possessive, sorry. So if you compare, let's look at the first line. Tumbi, the full form is tumbi naga. Okay. The contracted form is tumbi naga. So here you see that tumbi segmentally is the same. Yeah, table 6, huh? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, it is. And the contracted form, you see that the possessive is shortened, right? You no longer have naga, you have naga. So you lose one mora. Exactly. I still put it in 2 words, but it could be just one word. I still differentiate the 2 words because it starts with the prefix, so with the consonant, but yeah. So in all the cases, you have the loss of a mora, okay? The thing is that the loss of this specific mora, the vowel which corresponds to the prefix of the possessive, the prefix marker, is high tone, is underlyingly high. So we have a high tone. We lose a mora, but we still have on the suprasegmental level a high tone. And now the question is, where does this high tone go? Because if the mora gets deleted, the high tone does not. So where does it reassociate, reanchor? So you have 2 cases. I'm on page 12. You have the mora loss plus the loss of this high tone, the loss of the high tone which is originally associated with this mora. And you find this in you have three different cases. If you look at the pattern, so it's on first column of the table. If you look at the pattern high, low, high. But I put the same twice. Okay, but let's look at this one. High, low, high. Here you have no possible floating high tone re-anchoring because there is a final underlying high, right?
What is the high, low, high? You mean high, zero, high?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Table six, yeah?
yeah, because we see that when this high tone reassociate or re-anchors, it normally does on the preceding mora. Okay, we'll see that in a few examples. But if we consider high, low, high, Nino finishes with a high tone, underlying high tone. So there is no mora available so that the floating high tone reassociates. Okay? We'll see, maybe it becomes clearer with other examples. If we look now at the low, high, low pattern or the high, 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 low patterns, in any case, what you see that these two patterns have an underlying penultimate high tone, right? So in this kind of patterns where there is a lexical penult high tone, again, here you don't have, it is not possible that the floating high re-anchors because of the penult underlying high tone. So here there would be an OCP effect. You have that in low, high, low, and high, 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 low pattern. So let's see at these examples. So that would be here and high, 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 low. So yeah, on the very last column, it's the rule which says high, lows, and OCP in parentheses.
For the low, high, low, you don't know whether
Low, high, low, yeah.
for the low, high, low,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know whether the high vowel.
So
the second word is the one from the other word.
so you are miva daga.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to miva daga. So there is only the augment, the tone of the augment on E, which doubles miva, and then in the contracted form, the last the floating high tone can apparently not anchor or reassociate on va because va already hosts the doubled high.
Or
But if it would double. And here it
double through a word?
doesn't. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Doubling does occur between words. Okay. So here the high tone doubling still prevails. So E doubles on A, and because A bears this doubled high tone, it cannot host the floating high, right? So you have this for the low, high, low tone pattern, but you have this also on the high, 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 low pattern because it's the same. You also have this penult lexical high. So it's the same, okay? The same rule applies here. So okay, it works. It's coherent at the moment. Now, if we look at the tone pattern low, high, falling, low, so with the examples ne pelo naga, low, high, F, low. The first example is ne pelo naga, my wing. So here you have this augment tone which doubles. Okay, it doubles, fine. But then you would expect the floating high to occur on O, but it doesn't. And here I don't know exactly why.
Why not O?
But because if you look at the tone pattern just above, high, falling, low, here you have re-anchoring of the floating tone. So you have davu. The first high on that. So first high, this tone pattern is very rare. It's not common. There are not many words as well. But in any case, it doubles. The first high tone doubles. You have davu. And then vu is apparently available to host the floating tone, and it does. So if you compare this tone pattern, high, falling, low, with the following one, 0, high, falling, low, you have contradicting results. You see that, huh? So I would say that in the first one, high, falling, 0, you can have reanchoring. There are no phonological constraints. You don't have an OCP effect here. I mean, you can apparently you can link a high tone to a mora which is next to a doubled high. It seems to be okay on this line, but it is not on the next one. So you have two contradictory results here.
The only difference is the existence of a
Exactly.
tone
So
syllable.
is it because they want to make sure that it's two different tone patterns originally? I don't know. I don't know. I don't see why the presence of the first preceding low prefix made a difference. And then, so in the second case, you have mora loss plus high tone reanchoring of the final mora of the noun. So we saw one example already, but there are other examples which are very clear. If we look at the pattern high, high, low, low, it's the very bottom of the table. Otambi, otambi waga, mailai. If you contract this form, then clearly the floating high easily reassociate with the last mora of the noun, because it is available. There is space for it. There is availability. And the same for the one we've just seen, high falling low, minets, davutaga. Here, the floating reanchors on the last mora of the noun, which is available. Now, if you look at the very first pattern of table 6, it's a very weird case. So you start from tumbi naga, and with the contraction, it's weird. The floating high seems to reanchor on E, but then the other consequence is the loss of the first high. So is it a neutralization effect? I don't know. Is it because the reanchoring of the floating high following an underlying high would create an OCP effect, but why here and not before, you know? I don't know. Or is it just a neutralization and that's it? But I don't know. Yeah.
And so they form one unit. Walking here, but you could say something like underground, and that sounds like one word. Yeah. Or at least more like one word than nutrition.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I see, because there.
So maybe there's you can like have one stress in underground, but not the under nutrition.
Yeah. Yeah, because it seems that Tumbinaga is just pronounced as one word. Yeah. Tumbinaga. Yeah. Kobaga. Yeah. So yeah, and then I give you just two two examples in context of the same kind of pattern, high-low, just to show you that in context also it happens, you know. So Dijile Obaga, Obaga, and not Oba Waga. So yeah, the question is this differential marking of possessive phrase linked with a difference of prosodic domains? So is it true that the full forms has two prosodic units and the contracted forms has only one? Does this have any link with the augment? So we know that the augment is very present on nouns, but there are also languages which have augments on possessives and demonstratives. So is the high tone which is linked to this prefix linked with the augment? I don't know. It's an open question.
Let's say, what kind of processes is it? Common processes that would actually like in Indo-European languages, demonstrative, does it have any with other, which, well, the argument is not possible to place with the argument is not present in any language. Like, but if you, like, for example, demonstrative, it's already demonstrative, right? So does it co-occur with the participle or not?
Oh, it can, yeah.
So
but it's not obligatory,
really
but it can.
like, it's not like, could be like the one that you have naga could be like mine or yours or something like this. It's a full form of the participle, it's not mine.
It's both. It can work as a pronoun. It can work as a pronoun. It works here as a modifier following a head noun.
But in this case,
oh no, here it's a modifier. Yeah, what I call a modifier. Yeah, yeah. So it doesn't work as a pronoun. But if you would say mine to express my bag, you would say naga alone, and it would work as a pronoun. But I don't know whether I answer your question.
Right. I was like thinking that there is a morphosyntactic motivation for assuming that there is only one prosodic domain or two prosodic domains that would explain if you have interaction, that what you're assuming being the relation or re-anchoring of the first. So if this naga is kind of, a pronoun, not a modifier, it would,
in the full form. I see. In the full form then.
Yeah.
And then in the contracted, it would work as the modifier.
Yeah. But this I'm using is kind of weird because that language, if so in French or English you can say my the book or my.
Yeah. Okay, I see your point. I don't know.
In Italian,
Yeah.
But it's a weird test where I'm just starting to understand that in this case.
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. Actually, I haven't thought of this. I wouldn't know how to test that. I would have to think. Because it's true. In the full form, it's the same. It's morphologically and tonally the same as a pronoun. How it would work as a pronoun, naga. But in any case, the meaning is exactly the same. But yeah. Okay, I'll keep this in mind. Yeah. Okay, very quickly now. This one will be very quick. So noun plus demonstrative. So in most cases, in most demonstrative phrases, you don't have any tone alternation. So if you look at 41, moana, child, and then in the sentence, that child did not go to the field. Moanole, moana ole. Fine. You have in bold the form and the underlying the underlying high tone is always underlined. So no tone alternation. It behaves regularly. Most of the time, according to the high tone doubling. Although, as I told you before, the constraint on high tone doublings are not very strict in Cuwabo. If you compare 42 and 43, in 42, mbiri ejo, okay? There is no high tone doubling on the first. It's not mbiri ejo, it's mbiri ejo. But in 44, boleji, you have high tone doubling in the same context. So just to tell you that high tone doubling is not so strict in the language. However, in a few cases, first high tone deletion, applies. And I give you all the examples I have in my corpus. So it's not so many of them, but they're still here. On page 14 and 15, between examples 45 and 50. So let's go to 45. Yaka, which means year. In A, B, and C, the first high tone is deleted. Yakejo in A. Yakejile in B. Yakejo again in C. The first high is deleted when it is followed by the demonstrative. The same in 46 with membesi, which means morning. But when it's followed in 46 by abano, which is a demonstrative, you have membesabano. First high tone deletion again. The same in 47 with sumana, from semana, the Portuguese word for week. When it is followed by the demonstrative, sumanejile. Again, first high tone deletion. The same in 48 with nsaka, which means time. The same in 49 with nzua, sun, nzogwe, rain. And in 50, dila.
In 41, yeah. In 44, no. One, no.
And no, because the first high tone is still there. You see,
the difference between, for example, 41 and 40, between 44 and 45A. Yeah.
45A, let's check on
so bola,
yes, good.
the first high tone bola appears as it should appear. But in 45 and all the examples below, the first high, the high of the augment, gets deleted. You see, when it is followed by. So why? The question is why? Why in these forms, the first high tone deletion occurs? So it's not phonologically driven. For sure, it's not, because why in just those words? It seems that it's more, it has to do with semantics. These words are adverbial in nature. Most are linked with a temporal meaning. So this time, this morning, with this sun, with this rain, why raining? It sort of has an adverbial interpretation. This week. So
the words denoting
yeah, because I don't have that otherwise. Only with these specific expressions. Yeah. Okay. If you know about some references on that, but. So yeah, is there any link again with the augment? Because yeah, it seems that it's the augment which is deleted in those cases. So yeah, is it restricted semantically to these items? Which has to do with the weather, time, temporal meaning, and in general. Okay, so I think I'm good now. It's the conclusion more or less retake what I've said, but I think you understood my point. So yeah, in the conclusion, I just wanted to I just re-explained the different environments in which first high tone deletion occurs, the four environments in Cuwabo, making the link with the augment, and then the remaining question, especially regarding this tonal variation in noun phrases with the possessive and the demonstratives, how to explain that. I don't have any clear answer for that at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's the longest talk ever.
No, it's all about
Yeah, no, for me, I'm cut before. 10 minutes. Yeah.
So I would just I have a short question about the history. Well, the historical motivation for assuming that the argument is a kind of proto determiner or kind of determiner.
Yeah.
So, what are the reasons for highly assume that? So on page 10, what are the reasons for highly assume that this is kind of a determiner?
Because
Can you repeat the question?
why to assume that the function, the historical function of the augment is to be linked with a determiner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then the question would be, if this is true, how would it think this is actually expressed in this language? Right.
Yeah. But if, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I haven't read too many historical accounts on the questions, but it was linked to the function of determiner because synchronically we observed that languages which still have an augment will use it in this context. And if you compare forms with or without an augment, nouns with or without an augment, that's the semantic difference you will get. So because this has been observed in a number of languages, including Northwestern Bantu languages, which is the cradle of Bantu languages, it is hypothesized. The hypothesis is that it's the semantic function, the historical semantic function of the augment. It's really thanks to synchronic account that you can try to reconstruct what's the function. But it doesn't mean that it's clear in absolutely all languages, and you will find many counter examples. But still, the tendency is that when you have an augment, the noun works as is more determined.
But otherwise,
more referential.
In this language, we have this augment, right?
Can
you get this necessary any other way?
No, demonstrative, with the demonstrative only. So if there is no definite marker in Bantu languages except for the augment or the demonstrative if you really want to be emphatic.
I have to tell you guys but the thing is that in Afro-Asiatic Berber, right? Berber is the only language I know of. We have 5 branches in Afro-Asiatic languages. The Berber branch has this argument in nouns. It's a vowel when it's a vowel at the very beginning of the stem.
Okay.
Right? And people don't agree about for expansion. Some would assume it's a determiner, but it doesn't really have a semantic, right? So the thing is that why Berber would Berber be the only branch in the family that would have this initial vowel being a determiner, right? Whereas all other languages start, Arabic would be even the case of languages of all having a vowel issue now. All nouns start with a consonant. Is that true for you? Right. So there seems something. I'm not in this kind of I don't know if there is any reason to talk about that, but Bantu languages are not far from so is there any kind of speculation
different families though?
What is this?
But back to the augment, synchronically, you can find Bantu languages which have or not this augment, and it doesn't change anything. So in some languages, the function has completely bleached semantically.
And that's also
but not in others.
Because northern varieties of Berber have lost this augment. Right?
Yeah. Like many Bantu languages have lost it as well. So
Other questions that we've not asked during the talk? I just have to add that just for the last thing that you said. So, for example, you would have the dual and the plural only in nouns.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. There may be something semantic semantically relevant with these nouns indeed.
And period, and like you could say, so, and this has to do with it's a Hebrew and Arabic. You can, if you want to say today,
Mm.
you add the definite marker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And not do it. You just do it with
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Right? You just say, you can do it with day, with year, with hour.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. But not with I don't know what. Yeah.
But here it's funny because it's the other way around. You would delete this determining function, the augment,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So,
But that's the point. When you say
but it's a differential
when you
marking. That's
say
what is
in
important.
the day, you don't mean this day, right?
Ah, I
Yeah.
see. Right.
But you can
Okay.
also add it to this way, right?
Hmm.
Well, yes,
On page 9, we have another question to add to your question.
Uh-huh.
You probably have an answer for that. So your question is where does the weighted icon come from, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's another question. Why? Again, why is this icon deleted? Oh, so you assume deletion,
Mm.
right? So what would be the reason for this deletion? Is there any mathematical reason for that?
Yeah, but so to find a reason, you would have to find something. I mean, semantically, which would link these different syntactic contexts, right? Because this deletion occurs in nonverbal predication, after conjoined verbs, in vocatives, after negation.
Yeah, well, these are not complex. I mean, it's not
Ah,
evaluating this high down because just to link to what Noam is saying,
yeah.
but you have very nice arguments against what Noam suggested. Instead of saying there is a dilution and no resource association, so you have nice arguments. But Noam was suggesting that while you're talking about no deletion without any real association, that would be the last high tone that we have in the would be the one that we lost in the in the Naga, right?
Yeah.
That we associate,
Yeah.
right? So we did some
Bec-
cases where
because
we
there are
see
clear
exactly-
examples
yeah,
where
there are clear examples
a new
where
tone
the high
emerges,
tone
so
of the Naga,
you
it doesn't
can.
go into the last
Mhm.
Right.
But here, yeah, I mean, for me, it's clearly deletion because it does not emerge anywhere, does not reappear.
Mhm.
So, if it, what would you say otherwise? That it is
No,
floating?
I mean, just if in terms from a mathematical, if
Yeah.
you talk about deletion, you need to have some
Right.
mathematical reason for deleting something.
Ah, okay, yeah.
But
I don't know. I mean, you phonological guys, what would you say then?
So that's your always be from complement.
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah,
Also
yeah.
in
Yeah,
design,
yeah.
not only out. Right. So I mean they are proposed. So you could see, I think you could see it as subtractive morphology somehow. And they are so you know that sometimes in order to realize a morpheme, you just delete part of the root.
Okay,
Right?
yeah.
So now Noam and me also work a bit on that. So now there's like a new theory of phonological activity, right? In which segments are associated with specific activity.
Yeah,
Phonological
okay.
activity, let's
Yeah.
say one. So it's been seen that in reduplication patterns, sometimes the reduplicant gets reduced.
Ah, yeah,
Right?
okay, yeah.
So normally you just reduplicate, right? Sometimes when you reduplicate, you have neutralization or weakening in the reduplicant or in the copy, in the base, or in both.
Yeah.
So one way to see this is that so when you have reduplication, what you have is fission. Okay. Fission in the sense that you distribute the underlying activity.
Yeah.
So if you have like one segment,
yeah,
it has activity level 1. If you reduplicate that segment, in the surface, you have 0.5 in the reduplicant and 0.5.
Oh, so you subdivide. Okay.
Yes, you subdivide that because you share the underlying activity.
Yeah.
Because you have like you know, you have
Is
like,
that what you're
you have undergo fission.
Yeah.
We're
Right?
doing
Okay.
that about not to be
So, but you could say, so, but then deletion is also like the extreme case of reduction.
Yeah,
So if you
indeed.
think that instead of an augment, you have a prosodic affix like a mora, you have like a mora that has no melodic content.
Yeah.
You have the underlying high tone.
Yeah.
Because you have that mora, which is like an augment
Yeah.
that you don't hear because it's just a mora, you spread the high tone, you spread the underlying high tone to the mora,
Yeah.
but that the activity level associated to high tone is diminished because of this fission effect, and therefore you cannot pronounce the H anymore because it's like further reduced. And there is a paper by Zimmerman I can
Okay.
send you.
yeah, about subtraction.
Yeah, so then you see subtractive morphology as additive morphology.
Right.
So all morphology is concatenative at the end.
Yeah.
And the reason why you see reduction, or in this case, even high tone deletion, is because you have, you know, you are forced to distribute the activity level.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
once
Yeah.
you distribute that, the high tone is not
Okay.
strong enough
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be realized. So therefore,
Okay.
yeah, maybe it's a bit abstract, but
But the point is that including some is
yeah.
which is the common, it comes to it.
I don't know if it's how they do it. But the point is that how many people work on that kind of thing?
Yeah.
They do subtraction, you have to do subtraction. How do you do subtraction? Taking
So it's good, I mean, that the deleted part mostly corresponds to a prosodic constituent.
Right.
So you
Well,
need to
that's
refer to something.
That's really,
But that prosodic constituent is not realized because it's not pronounced right. So
that's really very interesting.
so you could
Say
say,
subtraction on the prosodic level, that makes sense because you don't do, you don't expect to have any phonetic realization of, let's say, a mora, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but if you do subtraction on the melodic level, that will have a consequence on the phonetic form. And then the question is, what is it tone? Is it kind of, melody, or kind of, something that is?
tone, we see that if it's supported, gets deleted,
Yeah,
it goes
it's
to
lost.
something else.
Or it's
not
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah.
It's not lost. Right.
So yeah, tone is, I mean,
yeah, you could say it goes to the mora, but
Yeah.
it weakens because of this fission or the fact that it has to share it.
Fission.
Fission is that, yeah, how could I think there's
Yeah,
another
it's
term
split
about-
or
Splitting.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So whatever it is,
Yeah. Yeah. I heard fusion.
yeah. So
Okay,
fusion is like
fission.
coalescence,
Yeah.
right? Fission, yeah.
I think it's a process.
Fission.
I think it's fission.
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 Ah, yeah.
Fission.
Fission.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fission. It's kind of
I prefer fission.
I like it. I like it. It's not really interesting idea, but it needs some kind of abstract level of analysis. But it's very
I don't know the paper very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It means that you don't hear a unit, which is more is kind of weak and fission, right?
Or the high
no.
Something is weak.
I mean, it's normally for melody, right? So like practice morphology is that, I mean, in the multiplication, you see the with applicant, but sometimes the with applicant is weak. So instead of, I don't know, say, Rocco, and then you have to duplicate Ro, instead of Rocco, it's the Rocco. You have neutralization there, why you have that. So yeah, the reason why these people is that you have a shared activity. Sometimes, and the extreme case of Italy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, t'as vu combien de champs il y avait?
Ah non, non.
Bye bye.
Ah bah non, pas du tout. Ah bah il y en a 3. C'est ça?
Il y avait à un moment 4 même.
D'accord. Ah, j'avais même pas regardé.